Matt grew up in a Christian home and is the son of a pastor. At age 17, he ran away from home and got involved with drugs and gangs. Matt served time for assault and manslaughter. He was released on parole in 1993. He's been married to the same woman for over 25 years and has 5 beautiful children. He said that he is now a new man doing God's work. So everyone, please welcome Matt.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank Civil Beat for putting such a great event like this to talk about incarceration. Especially being able to meet a new brother and 4 beautiful sisters coming out here to share their courage and strength, with each and every one of us. I'm one, as, he shared of my past, and I still think of those things, even though it was 30 years ago, wow. Yeah. My conviction, Malia talked a lot about trauma, and this is pretty much what started me into that life. As he shared that I grew up in a Christian home, my father was a pastor, but that's where a lot of the issues started. Because not many people know that me and 3 of my siblings, of our 5 siblings, were constantly abused at home. I was that kid that used to be picked on. I was bullied. My father's church, I was the kid always made fun of. Everybody would just call me names, how much of a stupid kid I was. And then every time I would go to my father would do a thing that I thought was normal, would just smack me, beat me up, and tell me, you shut up, you don't cry. So as a young child, I grew up thinking it wasn't okay to cry. So I grew up with a lot of anger, resentment, and that's how I got involved with the gangs, alcohol, drugs, looking back at my life, that's a lot of the reasons why I was doing all these things. I was searching for a family. I wanted to be loved. I didn't know how to do that. So my reputation in that gang was, I'm going to do whatever they tell me so that they would like me. Yeah, not realizing that I had to commit crimes. I had to hurt people. We know that saying hurt people, not willing to get healed, hurts other people. And that's what I learned about myself. Because of the way I was feeling, the way I was brought up, I wanted other people to feel my pain so they can experience what I was going through, but not realizing now, that I affected and impacted their lives forever. And that is why I continue to cry for all those innocent people out there that have harmed their lives, just because I thought I was doing something good for my boys and my girls who I thought was my family. So growing up that way, and I was able to finally, approach my father. This was after a group of men from Word of Life Christian Center. They came out to me, they reached out to me, and they would tell me that God loved me. My experience in church, I never wanted anything to do with God. I blamed God for everything that was happening to me. But they would come every night where I was partying, getting high, still heavy with the gang life, and they would always just come every night. So at that time, I was released on parole. My wife and I, we had 3 children. I told my wife about it, and she said, well, we're on welfare. You can't work. Nobody wants to hire you because of your criminal record. So why don't we give it a shot? And back in 1996, that's how I remember, was the 9 words that Pastor Art shared. Is there anyone here who never felt loved before? And that's when I stood up, cried like a baby, and I surrendered my life. And this is the new me that I have. This is the new me. My life totally changed. I started to change my surroundings, hanging around with positive people who would just feed me positive things, and slowly, got away from that life, and the Lord led me to just deal with my father's issue, because my father was wondering, why is it only now that I'm serving God when all these years he prayed for me? And by that time, Word of Life, they did a video on me, And I told my father, okay, let's have dinner next week, and then I'll tell you why. So in this video, we watched it that following Sunday, and it showed our ministry team ministering at one of the high schools. Joe Osai was leading that group, and so it showed me sharing my testimony. So in my testimony, I shared all these things that I shared with you guys, on how much, I blamed my father for everything. He never loved me. And it was that time when my father stood up and he just yelled, "I told you I loved you." And then I stood up and I said, "Yes, Dad," but it was always when he was beating me up. And that is the first time, my sisters and I seen our father cry. So my father sat down and he said, "Son, you're right. Sit down, let me tell you a story." And that is when he shared his testimony of the abuse he constantly had from his father, my grandfather, who lived in Samoa. He was an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic, but we never seen him drink alcohol. So he started to share that, and that's when the healing began for me. I understood that my father was only raising me how he was raised. Yeah. So I believe, the Lord has led me to break that generational curse in my family. And from that time, as you heard, we have 5 beautiful children, and I never laid a hand on any of my children. I just support them, love them, whatever they want to do, and they're all doing good. My wife and I, we both pretty much came from broken homes, but we decided that we wanted to change that life, to be there for our kids. So that was just part of healing the trauma through forgiveness. I learned that I had to forgive my father. And that same pastor, Joe Osai, he moved on and he started his own church. Then he called me in 2014, and he heard I was still ministering to our youth, going into the schools, going into the detention facility. Weekly, he heard I was continuing to do that, and he said, "Matt, would you mind coming to my church to share your story?" To go, and I said, "Of course, I'm open to that." And he said, "Oh, but I have one request. Your victim sister is one of my members." And, just being obedient to the God I serve, I said yes. And I was able to go there that morning. He called both of us up to talk about the power of forgiveness. And sure enough, the sister went out and she just shared, her anger and hatred towards me, for what I've done. And afterwards, I was able to do the same and shared about, my upbringing and why I did what I did and how it led to that. And we were able to hug each other, and till this day, I was just talking to her. Yeah, from that day on, we became together, and as I shared with her, I formed this group called Peacemakers that continues to go and work with our youth. It's in honor of my victim, her brother, and my brother, who I didn't share, that my brother was killed in retaliation in 1988. Because of what I did, my brother was killed 3 months later. So just that right there, she heard about this, and 3 days later, I go into my facility and answer the phone, and I said, "First Lap, how can I help you?" And the voice whispered, and I recognized the voice. Yeah, the voice was of her younger brother, the same guy that killed my brother. Yeah. So I started crying. I already knew that was him. Yeah, I was crying and I said, "Mulu, please forgive me for what I've done to your brother." He said, "No, Matt, I'm calling to ask you to forgive me." Yeah. My sister told me that you guys make peace, and that's why I'm calling, because I want to make peace. I heard about what you've been doing all these years, and I want to do the same thing. Yeah. So it's from that day forward, I kept in touch with him, write to him all the time, and told him what I was doing, where we were going, and so forth. And he just finally was released earlier this year. So he's currently on parole. So I'm looking forward to where we finally meet. I still talk with the sister, go and help the family any way that I can, just being in support for them. But this is the power of love, healing trauma through forgiveness. So that's the main story I wanted everyone to hear, and this is the new man that I see. Like I said, I don't deserve to be alive with all the people I've hurt, over the years. But I thank God that I have another opportunity. So with that, thank each and every one of you.